Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking through with us through that short break. I am on with Lou, and Lou, I don't think we've gotten a cast together yet this season, but you know, our World Cup season last year I think was quite a lot of fun. Again, this is the Victory Road World Cup of Pokemon VGC. We're sponsored by GG Tour, Metafi, and Elgato. I'm stoked. I'm so excited to be back on mic with you. I know it's taken us all the way to playoffs at this point, but you know, after seeing how much fun I had watching you at Worlds, I'm so stoked.
Oh, thank you. It's been a long time coming being able to work with you again. Like, we've been kind of hyping up, like you say, this whole World Cup season, and it just hasn't been able to happen. And unfortunately for our reunion, we both seem to have the most, like, boring backgrounds at the moment. Like, I'm currently...
I lost a bet to Jamie Boyd. This is not on purpose.
I'm redoing my guest room. Does that count? This is like the old bed and we don't have anywhere to get rid of it from, so it's just kind of background. Like, I don't know, I could like cut some holes in it and put some plushies in, but...
I can't. That's the thing. I lost a bet. I had to do the Jamie Boyd interior design for one stream because I couldn't guess his world restricted pair. So,
but yours at least still has furniture. It's still better than Jamie's was once upon a time.
He yelled at me for having furniture, but that's okay.
We'll all get over it. We'll all get over it. Well, it's been a great show so far today.
Yeah, it's been super fun. I think the next match is the one that I've been most excited for throughout the day. Again, we already saw Canada and Taiwan in that first match. So now technically Canada is at team point. So thanks to Neil's win in that last game. But now I think this match is going to be, honestly, I think even more interesting just because of the team that I think you guys were able to see from Jian-Ting in the preview. And it's got the dual restricteds from Gen 4 and a Araquanid on it. So that should be, I think, really interesting.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how those teams are going to clash down. I saw on William's side as well, there was a Gastrodon. It's the wrong Gastrodon, but hey, it's still a Gastrodon. Maybe it will make the show. But I'm really looking forward to seeing both of these players kind of come down against each other. In kind of the World Cup records, Jian-Ting has gone 2-1, then 4-2, and hey, little Shadow, such a cutie. So, you know, has had a really solid positive record consistently. So I would definitely look forward to seeing how Jian-Ting is going to go in this match.
Yeah, and it's something that I think is, you know, it's a team composition that we haven't seen before. It's unique to the World Cup, and it's something that I think is going to be really interesting to kind of have a little bit kind of moving forward as well. Like we said, you know, Canada is at team point, so if they win this, they've moved on to top 8, and they can kind of just cruise through the rest of the week with the rest of their matches. They are fighting at a little bit of a tough time zone difference, right? So it's really nice to kind of be able, I think, to get that confirmation that you've moved on early, because then even if, you know, you're playing at with Taiwan, I think Taiwan is like 12 or 13 hours ahead from parts of Canada, so it can be a little bit tougher when you're trying to plan those matches out. But you know, I'm psyched for both of these players. I think it's going to be really interesting to see exactly what they bring for us for this match as well. You know, I think at this point too, it's going to be something that is probably a little bit funkier. You know, William Patterson, a player from Canada, played in the World Cup last year. However, Jian-Ting had the Taiwan Nationals top 8, the Koi Swing regional champion, Taiwan Special Event top 4, and Hong Kong regionals top 4. So incredibly accomplished in a region that is both really densely packed full of talent and also just a region that has a lot of really interesting team compositions to it.
Yeah, I mean, those are some fantastic records to have over the last couple of years, particularly with that regional champion spot as well, and most recently in 2022. So definitely a hot contender to go down against. And, you know, on the opposing side, like you said, for William, you know, World Cup competitor back in 2021, but it's one of those things when you're now here in World Cup 2022, you want to see how much further you can go. And like you mentioned earlier, Maeve, Canada has that little bit of breathing room right now. They're at that match point. They can just need to win one more. We're at the stage where we no longer have 8 matches sort of per section. It'll always be that 7, so you can push forward a little bit and, you know, not force a draw. And I think that certainly intensifies things at this point in the competition. And William, I think, is going to be certainly trying to push that through for Canada so that they can breathe a little easier going through the rest of this showdown against Taiwan.
Yeah, it definitely saves my brain from all the math of trying to decide who makes it through a 3-way draw in a group. So that definitely helps me a lot. But again, here are these teams. So we're seeing another Rinya Sun, right? That we just saw from Canada from Neil Patel. So now I'm wondering if this is still that Solar Blade Zacian with the Weakness Policy Charizard and the Focus Sash and Cineroar, because I think that's a really fun team. But I don't think if you're William that you're loving the fact that there's no Kyogre on the opposite side of the field. Dialga, Palkia, Incineroar, Amoonguss, Araquanid, and the Tornadus here. So a really funky team from Jian-Ting. I'm excited to see what it does. A really great option for Trick Room with that Araquanid. You know, having the Wide Guard as well is a great way to put a lot of pressure onto that Groudon on the opposite side of the field.
Yeah, Trick Room's a really nice option here for Jian-Ting. I mean, not only, like you said, you have the Arachnid that works so well in a Trick Room environment, you also have that Amoonguss, and you can start wrecking havoc on William's side, putting Pokemon to sleep, as generally Rinya's Sun does tend to favor a faster speed mode. I think one thing that's interesting about Rinya's Sun, though, is we've talked about it before, where it has kind of evolved over different formats and as the metagame has developed, and Zacian in particular is a Pokemon that's changed its kind of dynamic full move pool. We've had lots of quick attack going forward, but the Solar Blade Zacian, that was completely wild, coming out of nowhere, and I love seeing that adaptation coming forward, and I wonder if William's got any tricks up his sleeve on his 6 Pokemon. But coming out of the blocks, we have got the Grimmsnarl and the Groudon coming out for William, and on the opposing side, it's the Palkia and that Tornadus.
You know, this would be a really interesting time to see a trick Iron Ball onto your own Groudon to be slower in Trick Room. I doubt that that's what we're going to see, right? But there is still a nice option. You still, again, with the Tornadus in front, I think gives you a little bit of an interesting move pool as well. You know, oftentimes Tornadus runs a Tailwind, so you can run both a Tailwind and a Trick Room team on Jian-Ting's side. It gives you, I think, a little bit more flexibility kind of moving with both of, you know, with a couple of different team modes. And I think Jian-Ting's just going to have to kind of see where his speed tiers lie. Switching that Palkia out, though, instead going to be bringing in that Incineroar, getting a good Intimidate off onto that big physical attacker that is the Groudon on the opposite side of the field, who's very comfortably sitting in the sun right now, and maybe trying to block some sort of prankster move from that Grimmsnarl. Groudon, though, not too impressed by that Intimidate, going to switch out into the Gastrodon on the opposite side of the field, maybe trying to bait something like a Hydro Pump, but Grimmsnarl goes for that light screen early on, and that is going to at least put a big special defense boost, and then the Air Slash from the Tornadus onto that Grimmsnarl, just trying to get some damage off this turn.
Yeah, honestly, a really interesting turn. A couple of switches. I really like the Intimidate switch in for Jian-Ting. Like, the Groudon needed to have that Intimidate to apply some pressure, but at the same time, William going, hey, Trick Room might go up here. I need to bring in my Gastrodon. And I love this talk coming down as well, shutting any potential yawns coming out from Gastrodon as it goes through the game. We've seen how disruptive it can be. And a Prankster return as well, as that Tornadus is going to be paralyzed. So has the chance to be fully paralyzed, but also will have its speed reduced, as no fake out here. Incineroar's just going to go straight onto the offensive and pick up a KO against that Grimmsnarl with a Flare Blitz.
That is a big knockout early on in this game. You're boosted by the sun that your opponent set up, and it definitely is a good time to make use of it. Gastrodon, though, going for the Earth Powered in retaliation, doing a good chunk of damage, and also getting that special defense drop as well, which is pretty interesting to have on the opposite side of the field, even though your team is mainly full of those physical attackers. I think at this point, too, you're going to have to see exactly who Williams got in back, because you know, if he's still bringing just the 2 restricteds and then the Incineroar, and then the Gastrodon and the Gastrodon and the Grimmsnarl, but instead, no, he's brought the Charizard, which I think means that at least 1 restricted is probably left behind here, being that Zacian. So Zacian, I think, not going to be able to do too much damage anyway onto both of these Pokemon that don't deal with Play Rough, but instead the full paralysis here. Charizard's going to get that Heat Wave off on this turn, does enough to bring down that Tornadus down into 8 HP and knock that Incineroar out thanks to that boost from the sun. Gastrodon here finishing it off with an Ice Beam and getting a huge knockout on 2 non-restricted Pokemon.
That was absolute destruction coming out from William. You know, not only do you get the paralysis onto like the Thundurus there, you know, it gets fully paralyzed. I feel like there wasn't a lot that Thundurus could really have done in that situation anyway to stop the onslaught of attack. Charizard picking up the KO against the Incineroar, not something we see every day, is an Incineroar being KO'd by a Fire-type move, but getting that Tornadus down into such a weak position, allowing that Gastrodon to just pick up a cheeky KO, does just put him in this formidable position, and Jian-Ting is now forced to bring out both of the restrictors from the back, and yes, you have both your powerhouses on the field, but William still has utility to switch Pokemon in and out, and the key thing I think about our trainers right now is neither of them have utilized that Dynamax button, and this could really turn the tides, particularly if you're Jian-Ting. We know that both the Palkia and the Dialga, when they're in Dynamax form, they get that extra HP. They're naturally pretty bulky and hard to stop anyway, and they could easily be a wall that is going to be so hard for William to penetrate through.
Yeah, and they can both change the weather, right? You have the Max Rockfall on the Dialga or that Max Geyser on the Palkia. Max Geyser on Palkia seems like the best option here because then you can really shut down that Groudon. You do maybe help this Gastrodon out a little bit though, so you can't exactly go for that Max Geyser because that Gastrodon is sitting so frustratingly on the field. But you know, the option of a couple of different moves I think can really maybe kind of turn the tide, but a Max on the opposite side of the field to match I think is going to be huge because if it's this G-Max, actually no, it's going to be the Gastrodon here. Honestly, I think a Max Hailstorm is a pretty nice move to have in the opportunity, or even a Max Quake, to get that special defense boost up against this Palkia, and then you can still do that super effective damage onto the Dialga on the opposite side of the field. Palkia, though, going for a Max Rockfall here is going to change the weather, get that super effective damage off onto the Charizard, who did not even go for that Gigantamax on this turn, and at least get a knockout that I think Jian-Ting desperately needed to start kind of trying to get his way and momentum back into this game.
I mean, this is what I mean. Both Dialga and Palkia can hit so hard, but I love the adjustment that it's the Gastrodon that has Dynamax here, not Gigantamax Charizard, because Gastrodon can go for these Max Quakes, will be guaranteed to hit either Pokemon it chooses to go into. Yes, it's not dealing too much damage, but the critical thing is getting those special defense boosts up, because these are both special attackers on the opposing side of the field, and if you can get 3 special defense boost up, that's going to put you in a good position. And don't forget as well, the light screen's currently still up on the field, so it just means that Gastrodon's going to have that survivability out there, while, you know, Jian-Ting is going to start burning through the different Dynamax turns that he has available.
Yeah, and I think this might also kind of play into the fact that Jian-Ting did not make a move in his speed tier options at the beginning of the game. So I think at this point, right, Jian-Ting maybe has to think for game 2 of what speed mode do I go for? Do I go for fast or do I go for slow? Because I think you have to pick one. I don't think you can let yourself sit in this kind of strange mid space that you're sitting in this game. Groudon coming in right now too is an absolutely massive threat, because you've changed the weather once again. You know that you cannot change it to a weather mode that is not going to be beneficial to this Groudon. It's not going to mind having the sand up, and it is definitely not minding this Max Wormwind. Even though the attack drop's not too great, you're still putting on so much pressure. You're still a Groudon, right? You're still going to be hitting incredibly strong Precipice Blades if that's the move you choose to go for. Gastrodon's not too worried about getting an attack drop from that Max Wormwind. Groudon, though, looks like it misses here, and it looks like a double miss on that Precipice Blades, actually. So that Precipice Blades did not connect, and you're hit with that Riptime from the Dialga on the opposite side of the field.
That is honestly so heartbreaking for this Groudon. Not only does it have its attack start drop by the Max Wormwood, but then it can't even hit its own moves. Max Quake, on the other hand, being a max move, is going to have that 100% accuracy, and we'll be able to do a significant chunk of damage to that opposing Dialga while getting the special defense buff on William's side of the field for both the Pokemon. But I mean, what absolute devastation for the poor Groudon there, because yes, it's had its attack drop, but like you mentioned, it's going to still be hitting pretty hard. I think it would be able to get the KO on that Dialga with the Precipice Blade, even at -1, and then it's really your Pokemon firing down against the opposing Palkia then, particularly when the Dynamax turns it over. It's going to be much easier to deal with. You can just start steamrolling through moves, and eventually Gastrodon's also going to be able to use the utility to go for Yawn, put it to sleep, and things like that. But unfortunately, Groudon is just not helping out its partner here and doing damage. Max Wormwood's going to come off again. It is going to do a significant chunk to Groudon. I can't quite tell if it has picked up the KO here, but either way, it's going to be dropping attack stats. Yes, Gastrodon's not going to worry about that, but it is going to be affecting the Groudon.
Yeah, actually, that was a Flash Cannon, which I think you'll be seeing on that next turn. Another Precipice Blaze, though, looks like it does connect, gets that Palkia off of the field finally, or gets the Dialga off of the field finally, which is actually nice, because then you're not getting that Flash Cannon knockout. You can hang out at least for a little bit longer. Another Max Quake, though, like you said, from this Gastrodon into this Palkia, is not doing as much damage as you maybe would have wanted, but every single time you get this special defense boost, you're really making yourself an absolute nightmare to deal with. Palkia doesn't really have double targeting moves either, so you're still sitting really comfortably in front of this Pokemon that is now wrapping up its Dynamax turns as we speak, and is going to not be able to put on a lot of pressure. It can't go for the move that it wants to go with, which would be Hydro Pump into that Groudon, because Gastrodon just sits so comfortably here on the field. You know, if it wants to go for any other type of moves, it's going to be kind of at a disadvantage, because this Groudon was still moving before it.
Yeah, this is why Gastrodon's such a good little slug to have in your back pocket, because at the end of the day, it has that Storm Dome ability. It's going to stop those powerful water type attacks, like you mentioned, coming down into Groudon, and it's still sitting at almost full HP with these special defense boosts as well. The fact that Palkia doesn't have any recovery options means that Gastrodon's just going to be able to chip away at it. You know, it takes big damage from the spatial run there. Sorry, I said it's trying to do big damage, but it's a big hit, but it just doesn't deal enough damage, and it looks like, you know, the Groudon's going to be able to, I believe that was the Shadow Claw going down into the opposing Palkia and picking up the KO, taking game 1 for William. I mean, it's just amazing to see these ground type Pokemon coming out in force, and we always say that in team building you need to have a ground resist, right? You have to have something to counter the inevitable ground type Pokemon on the opposing side of the field. Here we've got 2 of them, and we saw them at the end of that match being so victorious and so strong, even if Groudon was a little bit blind in the middle of all that.
You know, I think Groudon at least got it together by the end of it, and it hung on. It hung on for good measure. It said, "I'm so sorry, I double missed. I'm so sorry, I double missed Precipice Blades. Let me at least help you finish this game off with a Shadow Claw," which is definitely, I think, the nice thing. Charizard and Groudon here being the lead, but then that Incineroar and Tornadus lead once again. So, like I said, I think Jian-Ting really needs to make a choice of what speed he wants to go for. With the Tornadus, you have the option to go for something like a Tailwind. You can match a max Airstream on the opposite side of the field and allow your Pokemon to come in and maybe not be at as much of a disadvantage by getting those big hits early. But, you know, you're still at a point where you cannot Dynamax this turn. You don't want to Dynamax this turn. Whereas William could Dynamax, could go for that Gigantamax, could get some chip damage off by going for a G-Max Wildfire into that Tornadus, especially with this Sun Boost. And you can't change the weather right now. You can't do a thing about it.
Yeah, that's really true. The Sun's here to stay at this point in time. And I like the switch up by Jian-Ting, bringing in the Incineroar straight away. You know, you've got the Fake Out Pressure straight out of the bat. Doesn't go for it, though. It's just going to be the Tailwind. So, like, hearing you going for those speed control options straight away as the Charizard does go for the Heat Wave. Oh, it does so much damage. Takes the Tornadus down to its focus sash, leaving it very vulnerable. But there's just a burn, so Charizard's able to KO it by the end of this turn, as once again Incineroar just goes straight onto the offensive, uses the Sun to its advantage to do over a third of damage to that opposing Groudon. Significant chunk of damage that could be factual later on in the match. As Precipice Blades comes out, of course it's going to avoid the Tornadus up in the air, but thanks to that Intimidate, it's not going to be able to get the KO on the opposing Incineroar.
That is a really unfortunate burn, right? Because you know at that point you've got the Focus Sash, you know you can handle it, and then that Groudon wasn't even able to target it. So you really, if you're William, you're pretty thankful right there to get that knockout. Already force one of those restricteds onto the field, remove any opportunity maybe for flinches with that Air Slash we saw earlier, and just remove the opportunity for another Tailwind later. These Pokemon do not have speed control options during their Dynamax forms. You know, it's oftentimes that Max Quake, Max Rockfall, Max Steel Spike, Max Wormwind, Max Geyser. So none of those control speed. Your Incineroar is not exactly going to be controlling speed either here. So, you know, I think if you're Jian-Ting, you've now got to move quickly. You've got to kind of get as much offensive pressure off as you can. Now might be the turn to go for that Dynamax. Max Geyser feels like a cool idea here, but then you still have the opportunity of that Gastrodon switching in, so it still may not feel safe. Maybe time to go for something like a Max Wormwind, try and lower the attack of this Groudon before it can continue to do a lot of damage to you. There is no special defense boost thanks to a Light Screen on the opposite side of the field because we haven't seen Grimmsnarl as of yet. So I think that that's going to be a really nice option maybe to give you an opportunity to get some big moves out. Here's Grimmsnarl though. Grimmsnarl said, "I heard you, Maeve, I'm coming in." And that means now there is either a Gastrodon or possibly a Zacian in the back. And I think if you're Jian-Ting, you're hoping for a Zacian, but knowing it's a Gastrodon. Going for the Dynamax here on that Palkia though, you have that free Max Geyser if you were brave enough to go for it.
Yeah, I really like the earlier Dynamax here, straight away applying a lot of offensive pressure with this Palkia, and I love how Grimmsnarl joined the party, just as you said it there, Maeve, to apply that little bit of defensive pressure if it's able to survive out the turn. It looks like, however, it was going to be I believe it was a Max Mindstorm going down into obviously a Dark-type Pokemon, going to be not dealing any damage whatsoever. So a fantastic switch by William, not just to our joy with the Grimmsnarl appearance, but actually for strategic measure, being able to waste a Max move on that opposing Palkia. There is going to be some adjustments as well, as the little Amoonguss will join the fray. Groudon is still going to be able to go for its move. Looks like it is going to be missing one of those Precipice Blades on the Amoonguss that has switched in, but will do a little bit of damage to the opposing Palkia. And I think this is interesting now. You've got that Amoonguss that can go for any redirection. Groudon, however, is opting for those spread moves. It's just not having a lot of luck being able to find its mark on the opponent's Pokemon. And Palkia again in a situation where it can go for a powerful max move, try and maybe deal with this Groudon before it's able to deal any more damage to Jian-Ting's side of the field.
You know, I think it was a Max Wormwind to try and lower that Groudon's attack into the fairy typing of Grimmsnarl, which I think is a really interesting choice. But now that you've lost that opportunity to get that attack drop, you're still letting this Groudon sit as strong as it wants to be on the field. Grimmsnarl getting that light screen up. This is what it's here for. This is exactly what it wants to be doing in front of these Pokemon. You're still going to be getting this Max Wormwind off. You're just going to target right into the Groudon this time. You're going to get it right off of the field. You know, Grimmsnarl, you're not too worried about getting that attack drop. A critical hit as well here, which I think is really nice, especially after that light screen probably really paying dividends at this point in the game, and you're getting that big restricted, which is most likely one of the only restricteds, and Amoonguss here going for that Spore into the Grimmsnarl. So now Grimmsnarl going to be put to sleep. Can't go for something like a Spirit Break if that's a move that it's got to do super effective damage onto the Palkia on the opposite side of the field and try and lower that special attack, which I think would be a really nice way to use Grimmsnarl. And you bring Charizard out instead. So again, you're in a point where Max Geyser looks very tempting. You have to assume maybe that there's going to be a switch out here into a Gastrodon, right?
Yeah, Grassadon would be a really great switch in here, just to be able to apply pressure with the Storm Drain ability, and particularly as Grimmsnarl's taking a little bit of a nap, it is null and void on the field at this point. The one issue you've got as well, though, is that Charizard is going to be sitting incredibly vulnerable to something like a Spore coming out. But the one thing is Charizard has the utility to be able to deal with that Amoonguss. You know, we've seen how much damage destructively it can deal with its Fire-type moves. Amoonguss being a Grass-type isn't going to want to take any of them. But it does just come down to whether, you know, Jian-Ting is able to go for some switches and just try and stall through this Charizard a little bit. I think bringing in the Incineroar here is great. Yes, it's not going to be able to do too much with the Intimidate, but you might just be able to lose a turn from that opposing Charizard going for some damage here.
Yeah, Grimmsnarl also switching out here. It's going to bring that Gastrodon in. Like I said, not exactly wanting to face something like a Max Geyser, but I think I was looking at the moveset. I don't think I actually saw a Hydro Pump in those Dynamax move options, so that might actually be an interesting piece of information that William is playing around, that Jian-Ting is not playing around. Gigantamax Charizard here, though, like you said, I think the opportunity to go for a G-Max Wildfire into that Amoonguss slot, even if it had protected, is going to be a ton of damage, and this Incineroar I don't think is going to be able to hang on, but instead, there is going to be a Max Guard this turn to stall out one of these turns, which is most likely a Max Rockfall here from the Palkia onto that Charizard, possibly, to get as much damage off as possible.
That was a fantastic play by William. Yes, you're using one of your own max turns to go for a max guard, but the key thing is because a max move can go through a protect, it's still going to have that secondary effect. Not only is it going to do damage, but then the weather would have changed. We would have had the sand on the field, and Charizard wouldn't be as happy. It wants to have the sun in the sky. It wants its solar power ability to be activated. And so going for the max guard means that you're not going to get those residual effects. So fantastic play by William. And having Gastrodon on the field as well, we saw how, you know, dominant it was in that particular game one. It can start applying some pressure as well, following up with some Yawns or some Ice Beams here or there just to deal some big damage. But really, Charizard's in the driving seat now. It can go for one of those G-Max Wildfires, deal significant damage, pick up a KO, and obviously set that residual damage going through the field as well.
Yeah, definitely. Now that I have that full confirmation that there is no Hydro Pump, right, I think Jian-Ting maybe is not as worried about this Gastrodon on the opposite side of the field as he may have been leading William to believe. But fake out into that Gastrodon, great way to stop something like a Yawn. You're going for this, I believe that was a rock throw there, maybe? I'm not entirely sure, but it activates the weakness policy onto this Charizard to do a bunch of damage and allow for this Charizard to maybe get a big knockout in return with a Max Airstream. Gonna get this Palkia off of the field and boost the speed of the Pokemon on the opposite side of the field. You've still got Dialga, which I think is one of your better options to maybe deal with a Charizard, but you're not too happy bringing it in front of a weakness policy one.
I mean, William played that turn so fantastically. The Charizard was slower than the opposing Palkia. It does get hit, but then it means the weakness policy has been activated, and then it goes for the max airstream. So then the speed is activated. You don't have to worry about the boost. You've already got him. And like you said, yeah, you've got, you know, Dialga, you've got the Amoonguss there as well, but neither of them want to come down against this Charizard when it's in its A Gigantamax phase and B weakness policy boosted. So bringing in the Amoonguss here, at least I suppose you've got a little bit of redirection, maybe allowing the Incineroar that is potentially obviously going to be faster than the Gastrodon to try and deal with the Charizard, maybe going for something like a Flare Blitz with the sun boosting it. It might be able to deal enough damage to get a KO, but it's certainly risky at this point.
Yeah, and actually not even having the Dialga in the back, my brain was just so focused on you bring both your restricteds to every single game, because that's how this format works, even though William has proven me wrong both this game and the last. And actually, you know, I think at this point you've only got two Pokemon that aren't exactly, like you said, known as the most offensive of threats, and now you're going to be forfeiting this game at this point, which I think is a really great, exciting moment for William, because he has just secured the win for Canada to move on into the top 8, and that is sadly going to knock out Taiwan in this stage of the competition. But it's a really interesting way to see how oppressive that team composition of Rinya's Sun can be. And like you said earlier, and you know, as we spoke about a little bit earlier, that weakness policy Charizard was the bane of existence at Worlds on Saturday. I feel like I heard that being said quite a lot, of great weakness policy Charizard once again. And you can see exactly why it's so frustrating, because if you can take something like a power gem from a Palkia maybe, and not get knocked out, but then you can still fire back and knock out whatever just hit you with the super effective move, so that nothing's going to hit you with a super effective move, you're going to be pretty comfortable moving forward. And even though there was no Hydro Pump as well on that Palkia, that Gastrodon was just so annoying, because you have no good way to take care of it. You're not, it's not exactly like a Grass Knot Amoonguss or an Energy Ball Amoonguss sort of situation there. Typically they're running something like that Pollen Puff to help buff their partner Pokemon.
I think that's the risk you run, though, when you kind of leave grass-type moves at home a little bit. We've seen the rise of Kartana and Rillaboom most recently, but Pokemon like Amoonguss don't, like you say, tend to carry those offensive moves. And unless you have got a Pokemon that's going to be able to apply pressure to the Gastrodon, you are absolutely forced to deal with it. Whether it's due to its Storm Drain ability, whether it's drawn to the capacity to yawn your Pokemon asleep, it is so annoying to deal with. And particularly when it gets into that Dynamax form, the fact that it can go for things like the Max Quake, get the special defense boost up, that can be really irritating to deal with. And I really think having the combination of that Rinja Sun core, but channeling in the shift that we've seen in Charizard, bringing something like the weakness policy, has certainly given the momentum to that team to just sweep through opponents who are unprepared for it. And just unfortunately for his opponent, you know, William was just able to do so well with that, and very exciting for Canada.
Very exciting for Canada, who did not even make it to top 16 last year. For them to be moving on to top 8 is a huge accomplishment to their growth over the past year as a team, and especially to their players as well, because I don't think we got to show as much of Canada last year as I wanted to, because I do think they're kind of a sneakier team, right? Like, you may not think of them as strong as I know that they are with the power that they've got on their team. However, guys, we still have 3 more matches left today, so we will be taking a quick break. Do not go anywhere, and we will be right back with another match from the Victory Road World Cup of Pokemon VGC.